Good morning. For this week, we had some videos and as well as some articles and some chapters to read. So I'm going to start off with the videos. The videos were about the Florida consent decree and the number of international students increasing each year. That's how the article begins. And how that in every public school, there's 1 in 5 students that do not know English. So that was at that time when they began this research. And so they were noticing that teachers had no training and no way to communicate to these students that were coming in that did not have English as their primary language. So lawsuits began happening, and there were lawyers and the plaintiffs. So the lawyers were Meta, METTA, and the plaintiffs were LULAC. And the Meta was Multicultural Education Training Advocacy, and LULAC was the League of United Latin American Citizens, right? So what they came up with was the Florida Consent Decree, and there were 6 mandated areas. And just to clarify, this was not like they weren't going to have new rights, but just whatever was already written for education, they had to continue to implement those for those that were learning the English language. They had to teach the same material, so the judge agreed with LULAC and said, we need to make sure that we are doing this for our English language learners. So that was the first video. For the second video, it was on culture, equity, and language. That's what it was called. And teachers that have been in those children's shoes shared their own experiences, how they were shunned and they were not able to participate because they didn't know English, right? So what they were communicating was, they felt like they were being treated as they were empty vessels, like they didn't have anything to offer. But in reality, now that they're on the other side and they are teachers that have those children that do not speak English fluently, they're able to appreciate them and know that they do have a lot to contribute because they were in those shoes before, right? Which is the truth. They do have a lot to offer. So as far as the readings go, the first article that I went over was the Florida LULAC Consent Decree Overview. And it just goes through the years of lawsuits concerning equal rights to classrooms for English language learners, as well as rights for those that are undocumented. In 1990, they were not given new rights, but they were making sure that ELLs are provided with what is already happening, right? They're looking at their language proficiency, academic potential. They're implementing positive self-image, as long as trying to encourage strong self-esteem so that they don't feel so left out that they're then not receiving or not, trying to learn. They're not so brought down by the fact that they're not like everybody else. So they have equal access to appropriate programming. The 5 requirements are: 1, they have an ELL plan, so they have an individual plan. Basic ESOL instruction, home language instructional strategies. So obviously, as they are learning and we are transitioning them into learning the English language, there does need to be some translation that is happening. They need to identify the ELL, so teachers are identifying who these English language learners are and making sure that they are best served, and that parent involvement is required. So we are making sure that the parents are involved in the support of their kids' learning. There's also in that article, we talk about the No Child Left Behind. Those are funds that are given to personnel, to programs, to the curriculum. There's technology, monitoring the students. That's where all of these funds go. Classroom media material, making sure that they are best served. There's also alternate education, so pre-K programs. They have a home language survey. There's an ESE multicultural team. There's magnet programs, pre-vocational education, career, technology education. So all of that with the main goal that there is equal access to appropriate programming for all of the students that are learning the English language. As far as the book, chapter 1 and 2 is what we were assigned. Chapter 1 is pretty much the the introduction of the whole book, it's instead of using the term English language learners, they encourage that they are becoming emergent bilinguals. So it's not so much that they don't know something, but that they already know something, but they are acquiring a new language. So now they're not just, single language, they're actually becoming bilinguals. There's an importance to that because we don't want to show their deficit, but we want to show like how they are actually, they already have something great. We're just adding to that great thing. They're not limited. We need to think of their potential. Having high expectations for them. So not giving them easy, busy work, but understanding that they can do things just like the other students. Not focusing on limiting and only focus on learning English. So we're not just focusing on them learning English, but there's also life skills that we want to teach them, even though they don't know the English language. We want to, the chapter 1 talks about being more rigorous, being more challenging in the curriculum. So then now going to chapter 2, there's a lot of percentages and a lot of numbers on how this is a growing thing in the United States. The fact that they are emergent bilinguals does not speak of their academic abilities. So they're learning English, but they do have great academic abilities that we can build upon, is pretty much what the chapter is saying. One of the big things is, and what really showed me something that I was thinking prior, I was thinking, like states like California and Texas and Florida, obviously those are the obvious states where there's a lot of a high percentage, and the chart does show that there is a high percentage of emergent bilinguals in those states. But the irony is that the greatest growth in the number of students, so now it's not just percentage, but the number of students is outside of those states. Like South Carolina had an 800% growth in a time frame of a decade. Indiana had a 400% growth. So pretty much what I got from that is, it's not just Florida that has a bunch of emergent bilinguals, but it's a lot of these other states. My own side note, I'm thinking maybe these states like California and Florida are states that are not very affordable for those that maybe are not bilingual. So they're going to these other states where they're able to afford housing and things like that. And they're able to be able to survive in those states. There is a section on how in the 1970s, in any type of census, they now have where it says Hispanic, and then that was changed to Latino, and then now it's Latinx, just to make sure that there's no gender, to make sure that there's, we're not categorizing by gender, but it's just by your race. So that's pretty much what I got from the chapters and from the readings. Thank you.